So all of the chaos is going to lead us to the morning of May 8th. And this is going to be after a week of kind of navigating through the skies and the seas upon each other, they're going to actually find each other. Now, the interesting part is, as I mentioned before, whoever launches first has the major advantage. So if you find them first, you launch first, you can hit first. The American fleet and the Japanese fleet find each other that morning on the 8th, almost simultaneously, within 15, 20 minutes apart. They're both going to launch planes, and they're going to, in some crazy world, pass each other through the skies. They're not going to intercept each other, but they're going to cross paths
by each other.
In a way, yes, en route to hit each other's other ships. So now, American forces, of course, they found them first, and they launch only 15 minutes prior, like I said. And the Japanese, they're gonna get hit. Both sides are gonna get hit pretty bad, take some really bad lumps. Now, the Americans are gonna locate and attack. Commander there, his name is Takagi. Both of their ships. The Zukaku was kind of like, at the time, like in a rain squall or like in cloud cover, and was able to kind of stay out of the action for a moment. But her sister ship, the Shokaku, was the target for the American guys, and they hit it really hard, and with 3 1,000-pound bombs. So these dive bombers, they come in and they make contact immediately.
And it's important to stress again that the coordination between the various types of squadrons just isn't there yet, because from how I understand it, they don't all show up on scene at the same time.
Yeah.
And so they thus can't coordinate with each other. They locate this carrier, this Japanese carrier, at different times. I mean, not astronomically apart time-wise, but at different times. And again, the dive bombers, their gun sights are fogging up as they dive on their target, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact that we did get 3 hits is pretty freaking impressive when you consider that. If you've ever tried to shoot through a rifle with the optic fogged up,
right,
it ain't easy. And I can't imagine putting a big freaking engine on it and going really fast towards the ocean makes it any easier.
You got to watch your altitude. You got to watch everything.
There's so many things going on, and you're trying to aim with a fogged up lens.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there that's very complicated.
So this ship, the Shokaku, is damaged terribly. It's on fire. He's unable to recover the aircraft that have been launched already. And so with that, they also took 223 dead or wounded upon that ship and was ordered to retire. So that ship is like, I'm out of here. I got to get back to Japan. And later that afternoon, the Zukaku, the other remaining carrier is going to recover both aircraft carriers' planes. On the American side of things, with our ships, like I said, simultaneously, so American aircraft have hit the Japanese fleet. Now, within 15 minutes, it's all happening on the same side here. Now, the Yorktown and the Lexington, they come under attack by Japanese planes at 11:13 a.m. The Yorktown is going to take pretty bad hits at first. She's going to receive 1 bomb hit and a near miss that's going to like explode in the water next to the ship, and it like basically rips her open at the seams.
And that one direct hit, from what I understand, went straight through the landing deck.
Yes.
Like there's a photo, if you look it up, there's a photo of someone underneath it that takes a picture and you can just see sky, which is crazy.
Absolutely crazy. Now, the pilots in the air, upon returning from the American pilots, they can see the Yorktown as the Yorktown's hit, but it's still continuing to sail and operate. There's a big trail of oil behind it. So it's like, can't miss it from the sky if you're a friendly or enemy pilot. Still able to maneuver the seas. Now, the Lexington, at that same time, she receives 2 bomb hits and 2 torpedo hits. Now, at first, it seemed like the Lexington was going to pull through this because she was still cruising like 24 knots, like as if nothing had happened, like damage control, firefighters are managing certain issues. However, not going to be the case. So both sides at this point have discovered one another, launched planes,
hit one another,
and now they're kind of, at this point, damage assessment. Let's assess our casualties. Let's get our planes back on the deck.
You know what it makes me think of? You ever seen a fight like in high school where two kids fight each other and each one gets a good lick in and then they realize, I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah.
Like that's been enough pain for one day.
Yeah.
That's almost the vibe I get for the end of this battle.
Right.
Like both sides are like, that's enough. I don't need to see how much further we can take this.
It's a good comparison because the Japanese, they're going to lose a lot more pilots than the Americans are.
And it's funny you bring that up because it's a point that I've been kind of holding on to. I want to make when these attacks happen. Again, we've talked about the Americans' fault at being new and inexperienced and not being able to coordinate their various squadrons in the attack, whereas the Japanese are a little more effective at that. Hence, why they get the 2 torpedo strikes and the bomb strikes on the Lexington. But where the Americans do excel is in their anti-aircraft fire. The Japanese seem almost ineffective completely in their anti-aircraft fire when our planes and squadrons attack their ships. On the other side of things, the American ships seem very effective with their anti-aircraft fire, which is interesting because the day before this is something we haven't mentioned yet, Admiral Fletcher has sent the majority of his destroyers and cruisers with an Australian naval commander towards Port Moresby to make sure that invasion fleet doesn't continue on with its mission.
Risky.
So their strong anti-aircraft capability isn't even with them. Whatever they're doing from pretty much from the aircraft carriers themselves.
Yeah.
And they knock serious numbers of these Japanese pilots out of the sky.
Like for this one, in this attack, the Japanese had launched 69 planes and only 46 of them had returned.
Yikes.
Now, out of those 46, once they landed on that other aircraft carrier that was accepting all the return flights, they ended up having to push dozens of them off.
Because you only got so much room.
Yeah, they're running out of room. It's like, well, salvage, can't salvage that, get it off. And so, yeah, the Japanese took major hit to their planes and pilots in this first go around.
That's important to point out because we've already mentioned before that the U.S. has this capability that the Japanese doesn't, which is to replenish its pilots and its equipment, its aircraft, and by the end of the war, its aircraft carriers. The Japanese just don't have that. So when they lose that many pilots and aircraft, they can't replenish that, right? I mean, They do to a certain extent, but they can't keep up with the replenishment rate that the U.S. has. We're just getting into this. The Japanese have already been at war for a minute, right?
Right.
And they're stretched very thin. They're stretched very thin. I mean, part of the reason they had to go to war with us in the first place is because we weren't giving them any more oil and gas, right? So like they're in a hurting
time crunch. Absolutely.
Now let's get into the fate of the Lexington. At 12:47, as a result of cracked aviation fuel tanks, the Lexington suffers an explosion below deck. And at 13:55, that'd be 1:55 p.m. for those not using military time, she signaled that her fires, she couldn't put out the fires. So not too long after that, there will be another explosion, and then followed by a third explosion. So something is going on inside of that ship. You know,
out of control.
It's out of control. They can't get the fires under control. It's catching other things on fire. Fuel tanks are cracked. They're exploding. I would imagine that the ammunition, the ammunition supply probably catches fire as well. Needless to say, at 5:07 p.m., the admiral comes over the ship's intercom and tells everybody to abandon ship. She's sinking.
Just jump into the Pacific Ocean now. That's got to feel terrible.
Dude, that'd be scary. Also, if you have to jump, you know how high up that is? I don't know how they get everybody off the ship, but I was thinking about it, looking at pictures while doing research. I'm like, if those poor jokers had to jump, that is a long fall.
Yeah.
Like if you don't hit the water right, break all the bones in your body, kind of a long fall.
Yeah.
Because water does not feel good if you hit it from a distance.
Definitely not. Pencil dive.
But needless to say, the Lexington's going to be scuttled shortly after that, sunk in the Pacific.
Bummer.
But there is a bright side. Although the Yorktown is damaged and damaged pretty thoroughly, it is able to limp back to Pearl Harbor. this is crucial right here. The Japanese and the Americans take two very different approaches in the way they repair their aircraft carrier, and it's going to play in the future Battle of Midway in a very, very, very important way. The Yorktown is sent back to Pearl Harbor and is repaired and refitted in 3 days' time.
That's incredible.
And then sent right back out to sea, right? On top of that, all the aircraft aircraft and pilots that the Yorktown had lost, there was an argument that they should either send those pilots and those aircraft to bases and make them be, land-based aircraft that protect bases in the Pacific. Instead of doing that, Admiral Nimitz is able to argue that no, they're the only trained and experienced aircraft carrier pilots we have, though they need to be on that ship. So what they end up doing is they end up taking planes and pilots from the USS Saratoga, which is back at Washington, being refitted itself, and send them to the Yorktown. And that's how they get an air group. And that air group will play a very, very strategic role in the upcoming Battle of Midway. Whereas the Japanese, when they send their aircraft carrier back to be refitted, do the opposite. They, instead of pulling from another aircraft carrier to supplement their existing aircraft carrier, they decide not to do that. And they wait. And they end up going to Midway with less aircraft carriers than they probably could have had.
Yeah.
So it really plays out to our benefit.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this clip from America Fog of War, catch the rest of the episode here.